everybody. Okay, so we're going to read chapter 10. This is a really big deal, so in your notebook, just write it right now. Write what it says 1619, a big year. It's such a big year in American history that there's a book that is actually just called 1619. It's a year that some really bad things started in what was to become America, and some really good things started in what was to become America. That's kind of the story of our country, isn't it? So we're going to go ahead and start. Have your notebooks out ready. You should be looking at the screen, pausing it when there's something important to write down or that you're curious about. You've got to really interact with that text to be able to understand what's happening rather than just listening to my voice. I'm going to try it big today. We'll see if you like it better like this, being able to see parts of it. Okay, here we go. Chapter 10, 1619, a big year. The English found those first years in America really hard. Remember, 4 out of 5 of the first 10,000 settlers died soon after they arrived in Virginia. Most people would have given up, but not the English. The harder the challenge, the more determined they became. The year 1619 was a turning point. After 1619, you could tell the English were in America to stay. It was a year of many firsts in Virginia. The first boatload of Africans, the first boatload of women, the first labor strike, the first time English settlers are allowed to own land, the first elected lawmakers. That's a lot for any year. You already know about that boatload of Africans. Now, what about those women? They too were sold on the docks. Do you want a wife? It'll cost you 120 pounds of tobacco. Those are the terms when a shipload of women arrives in Jamestown in 1619. These are poor women who are unable to pay the cost of their Atlantic journey. They want a new life in this new land. The lonely men want wives. Will there be instant romances on the docks? What do you think of these women? Do you think they're scared, courageous, crazy? Before I page up, let's read these things. If the colony was to survive, it had to grow. That meant sending women as well as men. Here's a picture. Can't really tell what's going on. Maybe that's them on the docks. And then here's the aside bar. The House of Burgesses is made up of 10 Anglican landowners. An Anglican is a member of what we would call the Episcopal Church, and in England it's called the Anglican Church. It's also called the Church of England, and it's a Protestant church. It was started by King Henry VIII, who had a lot of wives and wanted to divorce some of them. He beheaded one, maybe two. Anyway, so that's what an Anglican is. So it's made up of Anglican landowners elected for 2-year terms. You had to own land and be a member of the Church of England to vote. They levy taxes. What do you think levy means right there? Levy taxes. It definitely does not mean something that holds the flood back. They levy taxes. Collecting taxes rather than having them controlled by the royal governor gives the Burgesses power. They won't want to give up that power. Some of the early laws passed by the Burgesses, see the next page, of Virginia forbade pastimes that were thought immoral, like playing cards or dice. If you got caught not going to church, you were fined 50 pounds of tobacco, about a week's wages. It was against the law to swear, too. Okay, back over here. So here we go. Those terms. Oh no, what do you think of those women? That's where we were. What do you think of those women? Scared, courageous, crazy? And just take a minute to imagine, like, you're just gonna go take a husband that you don't know anything about. All he has to do is like pay for you. A few white women have already been in Jamestown, but sending an entire boatload of them to be wives meant that the English planned to stay and make homes in America. The French, who are settling in the north, are less likely to send women. Still, in 1619, the men in Jamestown outnumber the women by 8-1. That's a lot. Some historians think the reason there's so much violence in Jamestown was because many more men than women and children lived there. Do you think that's true? Do you think men living alone fight more than people in families? That's something to discuss. In 1619, the Virginia Company let settlers have their land of their own. That gives them a reason to work hard. The first workers' strike in British America happens in 1619. Polish workers at Jamestown, who are glassmakers, demand the same rights as Englishmen. They get those rights and go back to work. There are Poles, Dutch, Germans, and Italians at Jamestown. Do you think it's strange that they all want English rights? What about their own rights? The answer is very simple. English men and women have more rights and freedom than people do in other European nations. They expect those same rights in America, and so do people from other nations who come to English colonies. Does that sound familiar to you guys? It's still happening here, right? People are still coming to the United States because they want the rights that we have, and this is where it started. And this is one reason why 1619 is so important, because this is when it all started. John Smith said no one would come to the New World to have less freedom. The charter of the Virginia Company said, all and every of the persons which shall dwell and inhabit within every or any of the said several colonies and plantations, and every of their children shall have and enjoy all liberties, as if they had been abiding and born within this our realm of England. That means that nobody will lose freedom if he moves from England to America. So before I go down here, let's go up here. After 7 years' work, those who wanted were given their own land. Captain Smith said, quote, when our people were fed out of common store and labored jointly together, glad was he who could slip from his labor or slumber over his task. He cared not how. Nay, the most honest among them would hardly take so much true pains in a week, as now for themselves as they will do in a day. The first African Americans, mostly from Angola, were urban people who spoke Bantu languages and had previous contacts with Europeans. Many had been baptized as Christians. Many were literate. That means they knew how to read, probably in their own language, but also maybe in Latin. If they were Christian, they may have known Latin. Or if they were Christians that were Protestants, they may have known how to read in other languages as well, their own, or maybe English. So we're coming back over to the text from the sidebar. So we were right here where John Smith was talking about being right. So we're going to go right here, see? In 1619, a group of lawmakers known as burgesses is elected to make laws. They form an assembly called the House of Burgesses. In England, laws are made by Parliament. The House of Burgesses give the Virginians their own form of parliament. That has never happened in a colony before. By the way, do you know what a colony is? A colony is a land controlled by a distant and foreign nation. In the 17th century, many European nations have colonies in America, as well as other parts of the world. Those colonies are not all alike. In the Spanish colonies, no Europeans except Spaniards are allowed to settle. France admits only Catholics. The English colonies have open doors. Think about that for a minute. That decision, way back in the 1600s, to let all kinds of people settle in the English colonies, made a big difference in our country. We would become a pluralistic society. What does that mean? Think about what the word plural means, and you should write down the term pluralistic society. There's probably a couple things you should write down from this page because it's such a big idea. I would write down pluralistic society, though. The first African Americans... Oh, I already read that. Never mind. A realm is a kingdom or country where a ruler holds sway. Abiding means permanent or lasting. It can mean other things, but in this term, it means permanent or lasting. Wait, is this it? No, we have one more page, I believe. Now that you know about colonies, let's get back to the House of Burgesses. In the 17th century, laws for colonies were made in the home country or by appointed governors and councilors. The House of Burgesses changed that. England was letting colonists make laws for themselves. Write it down. Colonists made laws for themselves. That was a big first in history. An English governor did have veto power over the Burgesses. What is a veto? Okay, you can do some homework. go to the dictionary and look up the word. The governor didn't use the veto very often. It's going to be a new vocabulary word. Don't worry about that. But you should look it up if you don't know what it means. This is something you should remember. The House of Burgesses, formed in 1619, gave America its first representative government. It was the beginning of self-government in America. Whoops! Hold on. That isn't quite true. Hey, and some of you already know that because you know somebody else had it in America, right? The Haudenosaunee. Some Indian tribes had representative government. The House of Burgesses was the first representative assembly of the European colonies. Because as we know, the Haudenosaunee, also known as the Iroquois, had a pretty complex democracy. So write that down. The first representative assembly in European colonies. It was only a dozen years since those 3 small ships were tied to the trees at Jamestown, and the English colonists were doing something unusual. They were making laws for themselves. I'm going to shrink down a little bit. I think we're not... Yeah, okay. So I'm going to read this sidebar over here. A hostage swap, and then we'll look at that poster. In 1611, Captain John Clark was a pilot on one of 3 ships bound for Virginia. Like an airplane pilot, a ship's pilot is expected to guide his craft safely. Clark and his ships, Captain Newport was in charge of the expedition, made it to Virginia. They hadn't been there long when a Spanish ship sailed into Chesapeake Bay. A Spanish officer came ashore and was taken hostage. To get even, the Spaniards captured Clark and sailed off to Spain. 5 years later, the 2 prisoners were exchanged in London. In 1620, the Virginia Company asked John Clark to pilot a ship to Virginia. It was the Mayflower, and it didn't quite reach its destination. Yeah, write down John Clark because the Mayflower's a big deal. So you should write down John Clark, Captain of the Mayflower, and you'll get more information about that later if you don't already know it, but it has something to do with Thanksgiving. Okay, and let's look at our poster here. The Virginia Company was so eager to get women to come to America that sometimes it resorted to buying girls from their families or even kidnapping them from their homes. I had a feeling all those women on the dock were probably just not there on their own. And so let's see if we can make sense of this weird poster and the way they write it. The woman outwitted, or the weaver's wife, cunningly catched in a trap by her husband, who sold her for 10 pounds and sent her to Virginia to an excellent new tune. And then here's a song that I really can't read. Maybe you can. Not far from bent there. I can't read it, but maybe you guys can. So basically, that's what this picture is like he captured his wife and sold her off. So now we know more about this little picture here. Go back. Make sure you have these things written in your notes with big fat star on them. 1619, first boatload of Africans. You may want to put a little sad, unhappy face because we know that that is the beginning. Some of these people became free, but then as they kept coming, they were all enslaved. First boatload of women, first labor strike, first time English settlers are allowed to own land, and first elected lawmakers. Write all those things down. You can find it on page 42 of the book because I'm going to end this video.